What you should ask photographers when you're interviewing them to possibly hire them for your wedding. I'm a wedding photographer myself, and I've shot over 250 weddings in the last 9 years, and I've had probably thousands of meetings with clients. So let me talk about some of the most common questions that I think are really good questions that you should be asking your or potential photographer. We're going to start off with some more mushy-gushy feeling kind of stuff, and then we're going to get to some more logistical type questions. So one question that I was asked that I really, really love, what is your favorite thing to shoot on a wedding day? I think this is a great question because this is going to tell you what your photographer is probably going to spend the most time on and going to be the most excited about and probably their best work. And you want to make sure that that lines up with what your favorite thing is. Another mushy-gushy kind of question is, how would you describe your style? Now, I don't particularly love these questions, but I do feel like it's obligatory because usually when I answer this question, unless you speak photography, you're not going to understand the answer because we use a lot of pretty specific words that may or may not mean anything to you, like photojournalistic, bright and airy, dark and moody. Those have very specific definitions in photography world that may sound a little bit vague to you, and you may not completely understand them unless you're in the photography space. While I do think it's important for your photographer to have a good answer to this question, I don't put a lot of weight in the answers personally because I feel like it gets lost on clients sometimes exactly what we're saying, and then there's an opportunity for miscommunication. However, I think a better question is, can I see some full galleries? Because if you look at a couple of full galleries, you're going to be able to get a really good idea of what their style is as it translates in your brain. I like to send galleries to clients that are either in the same season that they are getting married or at the same venue if I've shot there before. Now, there are some advantages to hiring a photographer that has shot your venue before. However, I do think there is also an advantage to hiring a photographer that has not shot your venue before, because they're seeing it with fresh eyes. The first time I ever shoot a venue, I get the most creative. Because typically when we know it works, we do it over and over again, right? But I think I'm more creative the first time that I shoot something. So if you love your venue, but maybe you want a different spin on it, I would actually recommend hiring a photographer that has not shot there before. Now we're going to get into some more nitty-gritty technical kind of questions that are important to sort of vet to make sure that you're dealing with an actual professional. One question is, how do you deal with low light situations? The number one most important thing for photography is lighting. So making sure that a photographer can deal with any lighting situation that might come up on a wedding day and not just rely on the sun is important. To quote the great Lindsay Adler, who's a fashion photographer in New York City, there's nothing wrong with natural light as long as it's a choice. I use natural light for 80% of my photography, but I also have the skills that if I need to use something other than natural light, I can pull those out of my tool bag. And making sure you have a photographer that can deliver amazing quality work no matter what the lighting situation is important for something as big as a wedding. Are you licensed and insured? This is something that's going to be important because if they are not, that's going to be a problem for a lot of venues. I've seen a lot of scrambling at the last minute because people hire photographers usually at a lower rate price point that are not licensed and insured, and then the venue requires it and they don't have it. So asking that question up front can save you a lot of heartache on the back end. Not every state requires a license, so every state's going to be different as to what is exactly required to operate a business, but it's just something to ask. What about bad weather? How comfortable are you shooting in rain, especially if you're getting married in a rainy month and rain is highly likely on your wedding day? Unless you have weather sealed equipment or you know how to handle it, photographers may give you pushback about shooting in the rain. So just because you're okay with it doesn't mean everybody else is going to be okay with it. So making sure they have some sort of something to make sure that they're comfortable in a rain situation or what their plan would be for a rain situation specifically at your venue is important. Another really, really important one, what is your turnaround time, and do you have your turnaround time in your contract? It's really important to make sure that your photographer is contractually obligated to a certain amount of time, because if things go awry, you're going to want to make sure that you're able to recoup some damages if they don't meet your expectation. One big one that I get a lot that I think is really important to ask is what your backup process is, because we've all heard these horror stories of people who have lost their wedding image. Everybody should have the correct answer to this. Is everybody should be shooting on 2 cards at the same time, so that way if a card corrupts, you're okay. And they should have processes within 24 hours of the wedding for backing up those images in an additional place. Preferably cold storage, which means on a hard drive or the card, something physical. And also I prefer cloud storage as well. I use a company called Backblaze that automatically backs up all my hard drives when I plug them into the internet. Another question that I think, if you want a shot list, depending on how detail oriented you are they comfortable working off a shot list? Or what is their perspective on shot lists? For me personally, I think shot lists can be great. I always ask for my clients' Pinterest board. Usually when I look at a Pinterest board, I can see commonalities of things that they like that I can then apply to my work when I'm shooting their wedding. However, I make it very clear that I do not copy pins on Pinterest. Exactly, because I don't copy other photographers' work. Because when you have a checklist that you're constantly having to look out throughout the day to make sure that you get absolutely everything, it removes all opportunity for authenticity, real moments and real things that develop. Because your photographer is just anxious about being able to get everything on your shot list instead of documenting the actual moments that are happening. Especially things like you're gonna have your grandbrother's brooch on the inside of your husband's lapel, or especially things that are family specific. So specific family traditions or cultural traditions or special little things to your family. Like maybe you're going to pin something from your grandmother's on the inside of your wedding dress. Those are the kinds of things that I want to see on a shot list. However, I do always ask for a family shot list, which I can do a whole other video about my system and process for family formals. And then the last thing that you really need to talk about is the contract and the money part. So what's their retainer? What circumstances are, if any, are those refundable? What happens if they get sick on the day of your wedding or the day before or the week of? How often have they missed a wedding? How often have they had to call in backup? Because the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. How many weddings have they shot as lead photographer? Lead is important because being a lead photographer and a second photographer are two very different things. That doesn't mean if they've shot mostly second that you shouldn't hire them. It just means that there's a certain level of experience there, and in my opinion, they should be priced accordingly. Like you should never pay somebody a premium price that hasn't shot at least 50 weddings as lead photographer. And that number could be debated. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. As far as industry standard with the money part of things, anywhere from 20 to 50% non-refundable retainer is pretty standard. And it's 100% standard that the balance be paid in full prior to the wedding day. And you might ask, well, what if I never get my photos? Well, that's where your contract comes in. And that's why it's so important to have a turnaround time written in black and white in the contract. Because I can almost assure you, there are far more clients who have ghosted photographers on money than photographers have ghosted clients on photos. You just don't hear about it. Okay, I think that's all I got. I hope you liked this video and you found it helpful. Let me know what was your favorite thing to ask a photographer in the comments, or if there's anything that I should clarify. And we'll see you guys in the next video. And if you need a wedding photographer, you know where to find me in the description. Bye.